Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel for a brand new video. Today we're going to be continuing my small series of collection tour videos by having a look at the Hot Toys display. Now if you're familiar with how my collection looked this time last year, you'll already be able to see that there's quite a few changes that have gone on over the last 12 months. My overall attitude towards Hot Toys and my collecting focus for Hot Toys figures has changed quite a bit. So what you see in front of you is all that I've got now. I've decided to curate the collection much more and retain to a particular focus, and that has amplified the enjoyment for me significantly. So we'll go from start to finish, take a look at each individual shelf, which characters are present, how I've got them posed, and just go through my overall thoughts in regards to how they've been displayed. So first shelf on the left is Anakin and Obi-Wan from the Clone Wars. These are the 2008 appearances for these characters that were then translated into live action for figure form by Hot Toys. Whilst the Anakin is quite an outdated figure now, I still think it stands the test of time and pairs really well with the Obi-Wan figure that came out a few years ago. I'm very grateful to Hot Toys for actually completing this duo of characters, if you like, as for a long time it seemed that it wasn't going to happen. Now the poses for these were inspired by the original CGI renders of the Clone Wars characters that were used across many different promotional materials in 2008 in anticipation for the Clone Wars movie. So even though they're live action characters, I've tried to pose them very subtly but also very square looking, just to nod back to that. Now a lot of my poses that you'll see are quite subtle, but also convey a lot of attitude in regards to the character or the show that they're from. And in my opinion, that's the test of a good poser really. If you can have something standing in a museum-like pose, but it speaks to the viewer in a way, then you've done a good job in my opinion. And then on the right-hand side, we've got ARC Trooper Echo and ARC Trooper 5s. These were two recent releases over the last year from Hot Toys, and I don't think they could have done them any better, to be honest. I think these are two clones that fans have been waiting years for, especially since the last company to tackle these in 1/6 scale was Sideshow, and they did go for crazy money on the aftermarket. Since these have been released and are of much better quality, I think you can find those for next to nothing now, which is rather surprising. But again, I've gone for very subtle poses. I don't really go for action-oriented poses, not even with the clone troopers, but they're just standing there, observing a battle before it begins, holding their helmets, which is something I like to do a lot, as the portraits that Hot Toys give us, despite always being Tamora Morrison clones, as it should be. I don't feel there's too much repetition involved in having them unhelmeted, as the different head sculpts, they're all for different clone trooper characters, and they offer unique individual stylizations of that. So you've got Fives, who's got his goatee and small little tattoo on his head, and then Echo's more of your standard clone trooper. So I just enjoy seeing the unique versions of these characters, and how Hot Toys have interpreted them is really good in my opinion. So moving on, we've got Commander Wolf. He's a new release by Hot Toys. He's only just come out over the last few months or so, so I'm very pleased to have him in the collection. Hopefully Hot Toys will release Plo Koon, and then he'll join Commander Wolf in completing that display. So once again, he's in a subtle pose. He's holding his helmet, he's holding his blaster, but he's more angled to the left so that you can see his iconic damaged eye and scar. This is the same clone trooper head sculpt that was used with Echo and Fives, but again, having those particular character traits displayed does change it up a little and negates a lot of the repetition that you might associate with clone troopers. Now on the right, we've got Captain Rex and we've got Ahsoka. Rex is in his Phase 2 armour, and Ahsoka is in her Siege of Mandalore outfit. These are two older figures by Hot Toys, but two of my absolute favourite, as they're two of my favourite characters from the Clone Wars, and I think Hot Toys did a very good job in bringing them to life in 1/6 scale. Now, something you'll see with all these figures today is that I don't use the crutch or the waist grabber stands that Hot Toys include. I consider real posture, balance, and get all my figures freestanding without any risk of falling over. Continuing on with the Siege of Mandalore theme now with our second shelf, which focuses on the end of the Clone Wars, we've got ARC Trooper Jesse, and he's flanked by a 332nd Clone Trooper and Captain Vaughn. I just really wanted to convey the feeling of those last few episodes of the Clone Wars. Now, I've tried to change this shelf up a few times over the years, but I always found myself coming back to this particular display, so it's definitely a keeper and one that's going to stick around in the collection long term. And then we've also got our first Bad Batch shelf over on the right here now, with Echo and Hunter displaying those unique portrait sculpts once again, as I like my collection to be a telling of a tale, if you like. And what's on display is the progression of the Clone Wars and, in fact, the clone troopers that fought in it. So now I know when these figures released, the head sculpts were of the highest levels of controversy from collectors, but personally I really like the translation into live action using Tamora Morrison's likeness, incorporating those key character traits once again of the animated clones. So 2 figures I'm very happy with, as I am with the rest of the Bad Batch, which you'll see in a moment. This is the end of the row for the Clone Wars figures now, or at least the animated interpreted versions of them. So we've got the rest of the Bad Batch with Wrecker, Tech, and then of course Crosshair. So I've gone with an iconic pose for Wrecker. Again, it's still subtle enough, but this pose works for a two-man display, if you will, especially when Wrecker is a larger character. So he's smashing his fists together just as he's about to bring his helmet down. That is of course just resting on top of the sculpt. It hasn't been pressed down, as I don't want to damage it. But very iconic, very much what is associated with the character from all of the trailers and some of the most iconic scenes from the Bad Batch show and of course Clone Wars. And then we've got Tech, who is posed doing very much tech-based things, I suppose. So he's fidgeting with his goggles, he's got his data pad in one hand, sort of way of conveying those iconic character traits once again. And then I've just popped his helmet on the floor on the display base, and I am very happy with that figure. I know once again a lot of people weren't too keen on the likenesses, especially for these two, but they do the job for me. If I had any complaint at all, I would just prefer to have a bit more of an iconic smirk on Wrecker's face, or a big grin, just to convey the childlike nature of that character. And then of course we've got Crosshair on the right. I've gone for a very stoic, isolated pose with Crosshair. He's holding his helmet, contemplating his choices. He's got his toothpick in the corner of his mouth. He's about to say something sly. You guys know the character, and that's hopefully what's coming across with that particular pose for him. Overall, I'm very, very pleased with the Bad Batch collection. I maybe would have liked to have seen an Imperial version of Crosshair at some point, but it seems like Hot Toys is finished with the Bad Batch for now. So I'll take what I can get, and I'm very happy with these guys in the collection. So moving down to the second row of the Hot Toys collection now. This is where the Ahsoka series figures are displayed. If you remember from my last collection tour, I had my Mandalorian figures in this location, but since these have released I've had to make a choice and prioritise one line or the other, so the Mandalorian figures have unfortunately gone into storage for the time being. But that being said, the Ahsoka line has been one of my absolute favourite lines of Hot Toys figures to collect. I think it's one of their best in recent years, as every time they've come out with a character that's got a portrait, a real life head sculpt, they have nailed the likeness on it. It looks just like the intended actor or actress it's supposed to be. And as some of you guys out there will know, with Hot Toys it can sometimes be hit and miss as to whether that likeness is on point. This is again a decision that has been factored into my collecting habits. If the likeness isn't on point, then I won't pick it up. These are high-end collectibles at the end of the day, and they really should be the best of the best. So we're starting off with Hera and Chopper. Again, subtle poses, but ones that convey attitude and setting. So we've got Hera in a very confident yet cocky pose. She's about to deliver a mission report to the generals of the New Republic. You guys know the one from the series, and I've tried to emulate that as best as possible with how I've got it stood on my shelf. But she's a fantastic figure. The likeness to Mary Elizabeth Winstead is fantastic. And a lot of these Ahsoka figures have the movable eyes as their releases from the last few years, and I really think that that's a very, again, subtle element, but it adds to the overall display of the figure quite well. Now we've also got Chopper, and you might agree with me here that because he's a droid, you need more attitude and a pose from someone like that. So I've got him with his arms flailing around, his head's got a slight tilt to it. He's also got the small tracking device, which he throws onto Morgan Elsbeth's transport, again conveying those simple character details, tying it back to the series on what you see before you. And then on the right we've got Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, two fantastic figures by Hot Toys, two of my absolute favourites. Of course, Baylan was played by the late and great Ray Stevenson, and as much of a tragedy as that is, I'm so happy to immortalise that amazing performance on my display with this fantastic figure. Again, the likeness is fantastic. I think Hot Toys did a great job. So I've got him here, stood very strong in the stance, just as you see him as he's about to fight Ahsoka for the first time. They've got the orange lightsaber blades, of course, setting them off from the rest of the lightsaber wielding characters in the collection. And then of course we've got Shin on the other side of him, looking very ominous, very evil, as though she's about to strike. Again, very subtle poses, but very effective ones. Two fantastic figures of two fantastic characters, in my opinion. And now we come to two of my absolute favourite shelves in the collection. Starting things off, we've got Grand Admiral Thrawn, front and centre. He's flanked by Captain Enoch and a Night Trooper. And whilst Thrawn's one of those very calm and calculated characters with an immense powerful presence, whilst you can get away with displaying that figure on his own and it looking very well, I'd feel like having these two figures behind him really does add to the depth of display with this guy. You know, it's all part of the story of how he survived on Peridia. They're not just your normal stormtroopers, and because of that unique aspect, I feel like it brings a lot more value to how the figure's overall look appears. So I'm really happy with those guys. Again, stunning figures. Even though it's a stormtrooper, the Night Trooper is very good. Very nice craftsmanship throughout the armour. Very good paintwork across Enoch. And Thrawn has a fantastic likeness. Again, with those movable eyes. A figure I'm very fond of, and I know a lot of people were very happy with that one once Hot Toys released it. And then just to the right of those, we've got Ahsoka and Sabine, Master and Apprentice, two absolutely amazing figures by Hot Toys. Now Ahsoka, she's amazing. The likeness to Rosario Dawson is just incredible. It's spot on, and the body is a much needed improvement from the Ahsoka release. A tremendous figure. As you can see, I've got her posed again, very subtly. There's that word. Take a drink every time he says that, folks. But she's posed subtly, lightsabers in hand, just before a battle's about to kick off. I've tried to attribute this to different scenes where you would see Ahsoka standing like this with her lightsabers in the show, as with all my poses. And a big thing I would recommend to anyone collecting Hot Toys, always reference the source material and make these guys look as close to coming off the screen as possible. And next to her, of course, we've got Sabine. Now this is my absolute favourite Hot Toy in the entire collection. I just think the likeness is amazing, the armour is very nice, and overall, just a home run by Hot Toys. This is the golden standard, in my opinion, for what a Star Wars Hot Toy should be. Whilst there isn't many of them on display, she comes packed with accessories, but it's the attention to detail for me. And again, that likeness, spitting image to Natasha Liu Bordizzo, just an incredible figure, and one that I'm very happy with. And of course, pairing her with Ahsoka creates the perfect display. We then come into the Clone Wars flashback section, if you will, featuring Phase 1 Rex and Padawan Ahsoka from The World Between Worlds. So I've got Rex in his Phase 1 armour here. He's posed mirroring some more promotional material for the Clone Wars movie, holding his blasters up, looking very cool. This is mainly because when he appears in the flashbacks in the Ahsoka series, in his Phase 1 armour especially, he's just standing in the background, so I wanted to make it more visually interesting, whilst also connecting to the overall theme of my display. I love this figure. He also comes with the Phase 2 armour pieces if you want to change him out to that version. Now, when Rex first appeared in live action and when this figure was announced, a particular section of the fan base was up in arms about how the design had been translated and how it was incorrect and they didn't like it, whatever it is. Okay, this figure is specific to the version in Ahsoka. For me, I'm very, very happy with it, and it was a dream come true to see Rex in live action, as he's my favourite Star Wars character. We've then also got the Padawan version of Ahsoka, played by Ariana Greenblatt, so as a result the likeness is very nice. It's not very often we get sort of adolescent body moulds from Hot Toys, so when they go the extra mile and create specific tooling to make versions of characters like that, it's always very welcome. And this is just a phenomenal figure, really good, really well done. I've got it posed very simply, but in a way that it mirrors the adult Ahsoka, just to show a passage of time in the display to create that association between flashback and real time. And then on the right hand side we've got Anakin. This is the version once again from the World Between World flashbacks in Ahsoka, featuring the more modern Hayden Christensen likeness, which I'm very much a fan of. I know when this guy was revealed, not many people were keen on it, and then even upon release I don't think the blogger photos did it justice, but in hand, the expression, despite being scene specific, it's really, really nice, and if you get it posed just right, just as he's consoling Ahsoka, like in the show, offering her guidance whilst also being very witty and throwing the odd joke around, it really, really does look great on display, and it's one that I'm very, very pleased to have. This is the end of the collection now, so this is as far as the Ahsoka line goes up to in my display, and this is the end of the Hot Toys collection for me at the moment. So we've got the Artisan Dark Side Anakin. This was an exclusive to Celebration Japan and then select markets afterwards. Very, very limited and very sought after. One that I'm very pleased to have, and I'm especially pleased to have a good sample, as it's a little touch and go with the Artisan hair, but it's really nice. And whilst I would prefer sculpted hair, I'm very pleased with this. He's got the red lightsaber, and I've tried to pose him just as he's walking through the World Between Worlds before he transitions into Vader for a split second. And then speaking of Vader, on the right of Anakin, I've got a full Darth Vader figure. This is the Kenobi series Vader, but it's been modified with different parts. So I've taken the cape off, and I've replaced it with an A New Hope Darth Vader cape. And then the same with the inner tunic, that's been replaced with a Rogue One Vader piece. I think that flows much better than what was included on the base figure. And then finally the lightsaber blade is from the Return of the Jedi version, as it's more vibrant red, and honestly the Kenobi Vader had a very pink looking lightsaber. Another flaw with Hot Toys, sometimes the blade colours for the lightsabers are very, very weak, so I try and pick and choose, pick up a few extra parts where I can. But I just wanted to have this figure next to Anakin, again just to showcase that transition and the whole element of him embodying both Anakin and Vader in the World Between Worlds, just to cap off the display. This is by no means final, but this is the last of the Kenobi figures that I had and didn't want to sell. So for now Vader's here, but should we get something more interesting around the time of Ahsoka Season 2, such as an Ezra or a Huyang, then I'm totally here for that, and it will be swapped out accordingly. So that just about wraps up the video, everybody. Thank you for watching. It's been quite a pleasure to walk you through my Hot Toys collection today and discuss it, because they are normally a figure line that I don't get to talk about very often. So I hope the tour was to your satisfaction and you enjoyed the quality it was presented in. I've tried to do my very best as always. This will most likely be my final video of the year, so I just want to say a final thank you to everyone that's watched my content, supported me across all the different platforms throughout the year, in whatever capacity you've done it. I'm very, very grateful, so thank you, it means the world to me, and I hope you'll stay with me as we venture into 2026. Until the next video, everyone, have a wonderful Christmas and a fantastic New Year, and I'll see you again for some more videos very soon. Until then, take care, may the Force be with you always.